Oh, magnify the Lord, for he is worthy to be praised. Oh, magnify the Lord, for he is worthy to be praised. Hosanna, blessed be the rock, blessed be the rock of my salvation. Hosanna, blessed be the rock, blessed be the rock of my salvation. Oh, magnify the Lord, for he is worthy to be praised. Oh, magnify the Lord, magnify him, for he is worthy to be praised. Hosanna, blessed be the rock of my salvation. Hosanna, oh, blessed be the rock of my salvation. Hosanna, blessed be the rock, blessed be the rock of my salvation. I will call upon the Lord, for he is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. The Lord he lives, blessed be the rock. My shield, right in the middle of the wheel. Ooh, Jesus is my rock of ages. Jesus is the rock, my salvation, everything I need of my salvation.
Praise the Lord. This is truly wonderful from Minister Monique McCann. Blessed be the rock. Yes, I've been rocking back here, man, with that beautiful singing. I want to say welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's Friday night and it's men's night, and our focus for the month of October is leadership, the science of leadership, the art of leadership. Well, that's what we're looking at tonight. Leadership in the home, leadership in the church, leadership in the workplace, leadership in the community, leadership of our lives, leadership all over. So it's a subject that's beneficial to every single person. Well, we don't have the incredible Errol tonight, but we have the amazing Rob Clark with me tonight. And we will be heading over to him in just around 60 seconds time and just introduce him to you. And we're going to go from there. So I want to say welcome to everyone. Wow, that song really woke me up, I think. Blessed be the rock. I needed waking up after the day I've had today. So I'm looking forward to a session tonight, and I hope you are. Hope you got some questions for us as well that we could look at and focus on. So thank you so much for joining us, whether you're joining us from Facebook or from YouTube, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us. And let me just go over and bring Brother Robin. Hey, Brother Rob, how you doing, sir?
Yeah, as tired as you. Greetings, everybody. Yes, as tired as you. It's Friday. I think, I'm just feeling really relaxed. I'm feeling too relaxed, Pastor Errol, on this show. So you might have to nudge me, as we go through this. But I have to give God thanks. And so,
Yes, yes.
yes, welcome.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah,
Yeah,
I had a funeral today of one of our mothers in the church, Sister Joyce Veronica Jump, and we buried her today. And so I woke up too early this morning as well, so I'm kind of falling asleep and waking up and so on. But with all my friends online, I should stay awake. I want to say welcome to
yes,
Brother
yes.
Clive. Thank you so much for joining us. Annette, welcome. Thank you. Hey, Kay, Ronique, Vernon, how you doing? How are you? Tell us how you're doing. How was school this week? I think isn't it half term next
Awesome.
week?
Yes, yes. Well, my son was at home today. So that was a
Okay.
surprise. So they finished yesterday and they got next
Ah,
week off as well.
excellent. Half
Mm.
term in the COVID. Wow. So how are you
Oh,
coping
yes.
with this COVID, Brother Rob? How are you, your family coping with this?
I have to give God thanks again because, very well, very well. I think for most, if not everyone's really struggled the first few months, but the latter, you know, 1, 2, 3 months, I've adapted. I'd like to probably use that word, adapted to
Mm,
the new norm. Um, I'm not, shut in. Um, I'm out and about. I don't feel like I'm restricted in any way. I think it has been challenging because for those who don't know, I celebrated a big milestone 2 weeks ago.
mm,
And with all the social distancing and all the government regulations, we spent the weekend in a hotel, and I actually planned it that my siblings, I've got two brothers and a sister, my parents are both still alive as well. So I told them, let's go for a meal in a hotel. Let's go for 1 o'clock. So they all booked at the certain time in the hotel that
mm,
we were staying for the weekend, and they came, but they came with balloons, and it brought a lot of attention. And so the hotel were getting worried that we were going to have a major party. And I says, no, 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 we're just going to book a table. And thank God, we booked the tables, all social
mm,
distancing, well before this three-tier thing came in, and we had a real good time. The gifts and everything. It was one of my best birthdays, to be honest. So that was
mm,
really good. And to see mum and dad, brother and sister, and their family and so on, at a distance, but to see them in like, it just
mm.
made a difference. You know, work
Excellent.
work has been good as well. I mean, I can go into work, but I have no need to go into the workplace because of the work that I do. I can work from home, and in fact, I'm probably more effective this way. The work-life balance is good as well. So the traveling, the petrol money, the traffic, wasting time, and all that's just because of this.
Mm,
So, and my health has been the best it's been for years. And who would have thought
right.
that? So the GP told me, keep on doing what I'm doing, because a lot of people have gone the other way because you're at home and you're comfort eating. So my health. So all I can do is give God thanks. I keep on saying that
Amen.
tonight. I want
Amen.
to give him thanks because it could easily be another way. So and my wife, she's doing well. She's gone back to school. She's a teacher. And my daughters, in fact, one of my daughters has gone to London for a meal, not to break the restrictions, and then she's going to finish the meal in
Yes.
London tonight. I live in the West Midlands, and then she's going to travel all the way back. Just that she's not breaking any rules, but she's got some
Yes.
real interesting friends. That's all I can say. Mm.
Amen. Excellent.
So how have
Excellent.
you been
Yeah.
managing, Pastor Errol?
Well, I stay home, a lot. I work from home, obviously. I only go out when I'm doing a funeral, really. So, my wife and children, they're about more than I am. And I guess because of the church work, the prayer services, the Bible studies means that I have to be in anyway. So it's challenging, especially we're in these wearing these masks and wearing these different things, it's really challenging for me because it's so hot underneath them. You know, it's really warm. It's uncomfortable. Trying to speak as well, because when you're in the church and you're trying to speak, you know, you have to take them off and so on. So you know,
Yes.
it's a new norm. It's a totally different setup in the church now than it was before. Less people, obviously, than before. You can't really do certain things because of the restrictions, but we just have to get on with it, really, and do the best we can in the
Mm,
circumstances that we find ourselves, really.
mm, mm.
Yeah, we I notice we I don't know if you've been experiencing internet challenges at where you are, Rob, but I noticed that in London there's been a lot of internet. I think we're having some internet experiences now. I had some this morning as well, and I'm having it. I could see that we're having some challenges with Facebook and YouTube. It's like it's not
Right,
flowing properly. Have you been having internet
right.
challenges where you are?
I can't say I have. No, no. I'm on. Can I say Virgin broadband, and I've just upgraded. So if I'm getting any challenges, I won't be happy with them. Just swapped over. But yeah, yeah. But it's been running smooth, to be fair. Mm,
Yeah, no, mine is not smooth at the moment, so I could see that we're having some challenges on YouTube and Facebook, and I'm not so sure whether or
yeah.
not it's going to change. Sometimes it
Okay.
works well. I'm with Talk at the moment,
Right.
um, and BT at church, and it's the same challenges as well with BT. Okay, we're going to make make a move into the subject, and I'm gonna let Rob go first in terms of just gonna recap on what we did last week, and if there's any questions on the subject of leadership, then we will take those questions and come back to the chat room. So thank you, Kay, for letting me know that you're on half term, and hope you enjoy your week and have fun. Make sure you have your paper and pen tonight again. Okay, make sure you have your paper and pen. Never, ever, ever go to church or come on this streaming without your pen and paper. Okay, make sure you have your pen and paper and make your notes, and then never throw away your notes. Never throw away your notes. In actual fact, Rob, one of the things I did was I've written 5 books now, and all those books are from my notes. And I
Hmm.
never throw away notes. I always keep notes. And when I decided to write my book, it was from the notes that I'd taken. So I think that if people keep their notes, you never know what may happen later. Rob, I'm going to hand over to you, and then you just take it away and just recap, and then I'll come back a little later.
Okay. Over to me. Okay. So greetings again. So we're still on the theme of leadership, and I remember Pastor Errol had, was it 13 indisputable, I think was the word he used, indisputable laws, if you like, with leadership, 13. So I wonder if anybody can remember what those 13 are. And I then came in and I gave 10 pointers, if you like, how to remember leadership, or how to describe leadership. Now, so I don't know if anyone can remember the acronym. And in fact, I'm going to just kick off if this works. So I had an acronym which helps me to remember things, but this is one way because we're talking about servant leadership, and then that's what we're really addressing last week and the week before for that matter. Servant leadership, and I'll touch upon that a bit more. But an acronym um, that the mighty Lord has given directly to me is leadership spells out loving everyone and doing endless roles, serving honorably, influencing people. And for me, and I do a bit of teaching, training, etc. And whenever I speak about leadership, this is something I use, and hopefully people remember it, um, because this acronym, for me, it resonates how the Lord gives it, and it makes sense. Because leadership is not a job per se, It's not something you seek to get paid for. You know, a good leader, they have that passion, yeah, they have that love, that agape love for everyone, you know. And it's not just about love. You can like somebody and love somebody, but that's not really, you know, it can be an action love, and but the doing is what I'm getting at. You know, you can pick up the phone and go, oh, I'm thinking about you, supporting you, but proper support is when you're doing something about it. And you know, how many times someone's asked you to do something and you're tired, you know, you're tired, and you probably tell them no because you're tired. But a great leader will go that extra step and do endless roles. Why? Because they like to serve and not to be served. You know, Jesus taught, you know, to be the greatest leader, you need to know how to serve. So the greatest servant is or will be the greatest leader. And it's about serving with the right heart. You know, you can give, but if you don't give in the right heart or give cheerfully, then the Lord's not happy. And so it is with us. You know, we've got to love one another, everybody, especially your enemy. That's what Jesus says. We'll have to find some scriptures tonight, Pastor Errol, but we have to love everybody, especially your enemy. We're not just about loving your family and loving your wife or loving your husband, loving your children. Love your enemy, you know, all about leadership and then doing those things that'll help, you know, so you're serving and you do it good, honorably, yeah. And leadership, you can't talk about leadership without talking about influence, influencing people, not dictating. A poor leader, that's what they do. They dictate. They, you know, they do things. Even the communication is all about control because they don't feel strong enough within themselves as a character to influence. So, and that's what happens. It can happen to us as individuals. We can manipulate, we can dictate all these bad traits. But if we follow Jesus's kind of footsteps, you will see he influenced how, you know, he befriended, he stepped into people's world. He had empathy, you know, and these are key attributes for a great leader, to be a great listener. You know, more listening than speaking is often very, very useful. So I'm going to just probably cut it there. I've got much more to say, but I wanted to kind of just give you my kind of reflection of the last week and where I am at in terms of leadership. But then we can talk about the, you know, breaking it down shortly. But I'm going to hand back over to Pastor Errol.
Thank you very much, Brother Rob, for that. That was truly, truly fantastic. Um, yes, I will just also just recap as well on some of the salient points of what we focused on last week in terms of what I shared as well, and then we will pick up some points from you. I think the internet is somehow working a bit better at the moment, but just to start from the beginning, I made mention of indisputable, and when I say indisputable, when you look at all of what we are saying here, as well as any book you read, we are saying the same thing, but we may be using different words, different phrases, different examples, and so on. And these are points which I have realized over the years that have really been truly, truly talked about all the time. And one of them is, you know, you must have a vision. If you're a leader, you must have a vision. You must know exactly what it is that you're setting out to achieve. The word leadership means to lead. It means you're going somewhere. And so one needs to have a vision. And the Bible says it quite clearly, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so that's a very important factor. And as Rob himself spoke about as well, in reference to the point about right division. I think we talked about that last week. The second thought is about communication. As a leader, you have to communicate, whichever way you look at it. Again, Errol spoke about last week. There are three channels that we may focus on: the written, the verbal, and also the body language. You can get away with written communication as a leader, but you can't get away without the verbal and the body language, etc., non-verbal. So communication is a very, very important aspect of what we do as leaders. The third thing is you've heard the phrase before: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So you got to have. It's imperative, really, that we have a plan. If we don't have a plan, then we do have one, and it's for failure. So planning is paramount. Even Jesus himself said, you've started the work, but you didn't count the cost, as it were. And so planning is absolutely imperative when it comes to leadership. The other area we talked about was delegation, because a leader can't do everything. It's not thinkable that the leader could do it all. So the leader has people that would share the work with him or her. And delegation really is a skill, and it's an art. And the more you delegate to people, the more you're developing them. Actually, you're discipling them. And many of us in the church, we have been delegated to. Our leaders have delegated to us and given us responsibility and things that we are supposed to do. And lo and behold, we have then replaced them and taken their place. One thing that we can't get away from is constant review, ongoing constant review, non-stop review is very, very important. And when we talk about leadership tonight, we're talking about leadership in the home, we're talking about leadership in the workplace, in the church, also in our community, any charities that we may be involved in. But whether you live by yourself or you live with a spouse, really makes no difference. You are still family. And you're still in the position of leadership, and it's important for us to realize that we should constantly be reviewing and evaluating. This is probably, and the thing I may want to speak about a bit more tonight later, is role model. And who is your role model, and are you a good role model to your children, to your friends, to your colleagues, to those that work with you, and so on and so forth. And it's key. I look at Bishop Pullman, who was my coach, he was my mentor, he was my role model. I watched him and saw the way he did things. And he was one of the best teachers, because I was watching him. He wasn't so much a teacher in the classroom, but he was a teacher who taught in what he said and how he did things, and so on. These two here, servanthood. I speak about that servanthood before. We spoke about that last week. Servant leadership. That is just absolutely classic, and it's one of my favorite, actually, because I love to serve. I just love to serve. One of my great skill is that of serving. So I love that. And secondly, teamwork. I do not do anything without first having a team with me. Even Brother Stanley Golden, who's here, is a part of my team. He was a part of my team in Cricklewood. He was a part of my team in Wembley, and he was a part of my team in Tubbs Road. And here he is as a part of my team in Wembley. The first thing I do when I go into any church to lead, whether it be a small or large church, the first thing I establish is a team, because together everyone achieves more, and teamwork, it makes the dream work, as somebody said. As leaders, we cannot get away from handling change. Right now, we those of us in leadership, we have to deal with COVID, one of the biggest changer in I've ever had to cope with, and we have to adjust to it. You know, we have to adjust to government policies, people's opinion, human behaviors, and so on. And it's a major thing, and we have to deal with it. You know, it's pointless complaining about it. We just have to deal with all of the changes. Here are three of them. Integrity. One of the most important thing in leadership is integrity, and I define integrity as your word. You know, keeping your word. You know, standing by your word. How important is your word? Courage. Leadership is about taking risks sometimes, and sometimes it's not going to work for you. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want it. But you know what? You're going to learn a lot from it. I tell you a story. I heard of a millionaire who had an employee who lost him £500,000, and the millionaire was asked, "Aren't you going to sack him?" And he said, "Sack him? Are you crazy? After it cost me £500,000 to teach him, for him to learn that lesson." So he said, "No, I'm not going to sack him at all. He's learned his lessons, cost £500,000." And he felt that if he was to release him and let him go to his competition, it might be a disaster for him. So he certainly didn't sack him. Influence, as Brother Rob just made mention, and also John Maxwell talks about it a lot. Leadership is influence, and most certainly true. And finally, of my 13 is that we will always have to deal with problems. We will always have problems that we have to deal with, that we have to cope with. We will always have them. So there's no way around it. There's no way out of it. We have to deal with problems and make decisions, and so on. And there's just no way out of it. So the list that we both brought up, it's the same list, really. We're both saying the same thing, from different perspective, different ways. But I think that's enough for me on that one. I noticed when I turn off a few of my computers here, the stream work a bit better. If I do that, I'm going to lose the what you call it, the questions or comments. Okay, Brother Rob, yes, thanks for sharing your list as well. And if there are any questions, guys, you can go ahead and share those with us and let us have any questions or any comment. Over to you, Rob. I don't know what your maybe your most challenging aspect of leadership, the most challenging part of it for you. What would that be?
Challenging. That's a good way to. I, I don't know if I've got one, so I have to think about that. But I think when you were speaking, you spoke about integrity, and
Yes.
that kind of stood out for me because as a leader, you know, for me, it's about influence and it's about the people who follow. And for people to follow, there've got to be some kind of connection. Yeah. Because as I said, you can dictate and people do because they feel that they're under control. But for me, a good leader where people follow because they want to. And I
Yes.
think why integrity stands out is because I believe that's what people kind of, I say admire, I can't find a better word, but they connect, they relate with somebody who's got integrity. Meaning, if someone was kind of corrupt, bad mind, and so on, and I can't think of any good examples of anybody in that character where you would say they're a good leader. But then I say that and think about people like Hitler, where for me, quite clearly, he was a racist, he was bad, he committed genocide, but yet he had so many people. So then, where does integrity come into that? And I think, I think it does still, because it's just that there was a certain amount of people through dictatorship as well that basically followed him and admired what he did, rightly or
Yes.
wrongly. So I think integrity stands out for me. And I probably wanted to go a bit further, and I don't think I've spoken about this before, and I found something that I've spoke about. Well, trust, and we spoke about this many months ago in one of our other talk shows. I remember about trust, but I have this other acronym or formula when I just throw up there, and it's called the trust formula. And I don't know if you've seen it, Pastor Errol, before, but let me do this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yeah, and you might see something similar, but I've called it the trust formula, and the letters
Mm-hmm.
spell out Christ. And what I'm using this for to kind of put out there is trust is important. When you think about who trusts you or who dislikes you or distrusts, you got to ask yourself why. Some things are in my control why somebody likes me or distrusts me. But in some ways, or in many ways, I'm in control of how or why somebody will trust me. But first and foremost, my relationship in Christ or God Himself is most important. And
Yes.
then you say, well, what can break the trust between God and myself? And this formula just helps to kind of spell it out. I put their credibility. So God's got credibility. Jesus has got credibility. If you're not sure of it, there's a book called the Bible full of credibility. You know, you look at God's honor, Jesus' honor, the promises, the commitments, the whole thing. We talk about credibility, being the Son of God. I'm talking about Jesus now, who honored the Father. He was born with a mission, completed the mission, honored his Father, honored his promises. He was reliable. He is reliable, you know, and he was intimate. And one of the intimate stories is always the woman at the well. For many reasons, she was an outcast. She was a sinner, and all these things. But you look at Jesus, and you got the credibility, honor, reliability, intimacy. But where I'm going with this, the moment self, me, starts to overpower credibility, honor, reliability, intimacy, we lose that trust, So use that against people that you feel or think don't trust you. Is it because they don't see us credible? Is it because they don't see us as honorable? Is it because we keep on letting them down? Whether it's time, and I won't go there tonight, but time is something I'm precious about. If I say I'm going to meet you, I'm going to do my best to meet you that time. To be 30
Yes.
minutes late with no apology is a disrespect, and that's probably one of the reasons why some people can't trust others with time. Intimacy, you know, it's important, to be faithful and true. Intimacy. But if my selfish motives, selfish desires, if you like, overs any of that, which is what the bottom section is saying, if any of those are overpowered with self, and I've taken myself off the screen, our trust diminishes and we operate out of selfish desires. So for me, as I say, the integrity is important, but trust is also important. And it's not so much about what you say, it's what you do as well. Yeah,
Mm.
so hopefully that's kind of give you some food
That's
for
powerful
thought.
stuff. That's powerful stuff. Now, there's a point I wanted to come back to, but I just want to pick up a point in the chat room from Brother Winston. Says, when delegating a task to someone, how would you vocalize this? How would you vocalize this? He says here, I know someone who have a habit of saying, I want you to. This often come across as oppressive. So the question is, how,
Yes.
when delegating a task to someone, how would you vocalize this? Mm-hmm.
Yes. My style's very different than others, especially in the workplace that I work in. I work in a it's meant to be like an aggressive environment, and
Mm.
I deliberately have to kind of pull myself back and use the servant leadership um, approach. So to answer that question, it's a very good question, Winston. I'd love to see you on this show one day, but very good question. Now, with
Uh,
me, my approach is I have in the back of my mind motivation. What is my motivation? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? They say WWJD, what would Jesus do? So I think to myself, how would Jesus get someone to do something? And one of the first instructions he said to his appointed disciples was, "Come, follow me." Yeah, very clear, very direct, and assertiveness is key in our servant leadership. Now, it's about the words, but it's about the tone. And Brother Earl, put it clearly across last week that most of our communication is really through the body language, let me put it that way, more than the words. But what you have are individuals who are sometimes lack of self-confidence, and what they do externally, they overcompensate, and so they use the word to come across that they're confident, to the point of almost overconfident, to the point of being a dictator or oppressive, as you've put it. Now, as a servant leadership will put me in that position, as you asked the question. I have a motive. I think I can't do all of this. So, do I trust someone to then help? And if so, I will approach that person in my own way. I will share with them what I'm doing and what the challenge is. And then what I do is have open questions. Do you think you can help in any way to help me to, rather than going, I want you to, because that can sometimes, I think about, if someone spoke to me that way, I probably want to rebel and say no and switch off. So when I ask that way, I am hoping that the person will respond if they're responsible. Yeah, I'll say that again. So I'm hoping they'll respond if they're responsible and that they're willing to take accountability. If so, I've got a wide opening, and that's what Jesus did. He would start with a beginning, have a middle, and have an end motive. And that for me, and I've learnt this from the Bible through Jesus in particular, have a purpose. And Dr. Miles Monroe is one of my greatest role models, and I can say that with confidence because I've met him in person several times. I've got a number of his books signed by him, and so I've studied how he's done what he's done, and so. In short, because that was quite a long way of saying that, it's about having a motive, a beginning, middle, and end. Have an open question for that person to then respond. And there's times when somebody's volunteered or committed to do something where you then need to say, you need to go and finish that. And you do it in an encouraging way, not in a way to put the person down, but to remind them accountability, responsibility, trust, integrity. It's important you finish the role. And I'll pause there.
Mm. Yeah, I wanted to add to that as well because I totally agree with everything that Brother Robert said, and I think what I would also say is that as leaders we got to also bear in mind that I often look at three styles of leadership, three specific styles of leadership. I call it laissez-faire, laid back, the autocratic, and the democratic style. And which style is best? Well, we say situational leadership. We spoke about that before. So there are
Yeah,
times, Brother Winston, when the leader is going to delegate a job autocratically, democratically, or in whatever style, because it all depends on the situation and circumstances in which we're in. And especially, for example, if you're in the army, you know, that's just the way it works. It's that it's an autocratic style in the army. That's how we won the war, with that autocratic style, because it works when used properly. So it all depends. If you're talking about a work setting and somebody's working for me and it's a part of their job description, this is what you get paid for doing. Everyone in the workplace that is doing something has been delegated that job. So if I came and I work for, your company, what they're doing, saying, really, I have delegated these responsibility. I've given you this job description. This is what you're supposed to do. It's a part of my job. And so, sometimes I think people complain about things and so on and so forth. When it's a part of their job, they've been given things to do. If you look in the church context now, volunteers and so on and so forth, maybe that's the context you're talking from. I'm not sure which context you're talking from, Winston. Is it from the work-related one? Is it from the church voluntary? Because the way you deal with volunteers is sometimes different to the way you deal with paid workers. Are you with me? And so on. So it all depends on the context in which you're looking at it, and so on. But I think I hear what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with maybe what you're saying there. But again, it depends on the context, the situation, the circumstances, a lot of different factors. So for example, when I'm in a meeting and somebody may come up with a great idea, fantastic idea, and I might say, Jane, that was a brilliant idea. I'd love for you to take it on. Is it okay for you to take it on? And sometimes they would say to me, Pastor Errol, that's why we don't like to come up with ideas with you, because we know you're going to give it back to us. And it's not given to them in a negative way, because one of the things I said before about delegation, we should delegate to develop and not delegate to dump on people, whether in the workplace or whether in the church. But see delegation as a means of developing people and so on. I just want to end on this note. Bishop Joe Aldred, as you know, has been a bishop of the Church of God of Prophecy for many years. An amazing person, amazing man of God, and has done amazing work in the ecumenical arena and so on. And he said one day he was really slipping. He was really sliding away from the Lord. This is before he became a pastor and all of that stuff. And he said he came to, I think it's a convention somewhere, and he decided to hide in the back somewhere. I think he might be in Aberdeen Street, right upstairs, right at the back somewhere, things like that. And all he said he heard was, I think it was T.A. McCullough calling, "Is Joe Aldred here?" And he was delegating a spot on the program, though it was just in a moment. Joe said he almost died. He was in a dark place, and it was that particular moment that he spotted in his life that really made a difference, that turned the corner for him. And sometimes when we delegate to people, we might even try to force them to do it, through our wisdom or influence. Sometimes it's the thing that turns the corner for some people. You never know what a thing is. And sometimes what Joe talks about, he was called to sing. He wasn't in the place to sing, but he obeyed and came. But that shifted him, that turned the corner for him and made him to become the person that he has become today. And so, that was an amazing testament. And thank you for pointing that out, Winston. Volunteers, yes. We have to deal with volunteers differently to how we deal with paid workers, and in some ways, when I deal with volunteers, especially in the church, I'm dealing with it as what Brother Rob just said, tenderheartedly. Trying to. Sometimes I see that they can do the job, and I know they can do it. But they don't believe in themselves, and so I will try to persuade them in a loving way and try to get them to do that. And I often say to people in Wembley, if you know it's too much for you, don't take it on. Even if it's me that's asking you, do not take it on, and so on. So yeah, I think Rob answered that from a voluntary point of view, definitely, and even from a aspect, point of view. So thanks for that. I hope that
Can I add a bit there?
answers the question. Excellent. Anyone? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you talked about volunteering, do you know, um, us who work in the church and have leadership positions in the church, we are managing and leading volunteers,
No, that's
as
right.
in they don't have to be doing what they need to be doing. When you go
Absolutely.
to work, yeah,
Mm,
they're almost, they've been paid to do that. And that's why
mm,
certain managers and directors can boss it over them, because if they don't, they threaten them with the position. They can sack them and all these different things. But church, you don't have those type of things to hang over people, thankfully, you know.
mm,
So
mm,
when you see leaders in church, we may say we behave differently, and I think we do. But to see a great leader in the church, for me, outshines somebody who's a great leader in the workplace. Because
mm,
when John Maxwell talks about the levels of leadership, he says the easiest one is when somebody gives you a title. And don't get me wrong, you
mm.
can get titles in church, minister, pastor, bishop, and yes, it's all
Mm,
over then. I am on top of the food chain. But what John Maxwell goes on to say, he talks about being the pinnacle from memory. You
mm,
know,
mm,
those who just go the extra mile, you won't even know they're the director of any organization. They just have
mm,
this aura, their charisma, their character, their motivation, their passion to lead. And so for me, and I say all this to say that, those who volunteer to do what they do, whether it's for the men, the women, the children, a church, a community, and lead and have followers, we have to respect them. We have to
mm,
respect them. I'm not saying they're perfect, but you have to respect that they're often, if they're paid, they're not getting their money's worth. They're not getting paid what they're worth. They're getting paid to probably survive. But what they do is not driven by money per se.
mm,
So,
mm,
as Pastor Errol said, great question. I wonder which context was it given? Was it in church? Or
mm.
was it through the work? That question, and it really, yeah, just to think about which context that was placed in, and who's doing the dictating or being oppressive.
And just wanted to bring this point in, when we're talking about volunteers, a CEO, chief executive officer, ask a top consultant, what is the best way to find a CEO? In other words, they wanted to find a top leader to actually run this company in a very top position. So he asked the consultant, which is the best way to choose somebody? And he says to him, whoever candidate you have, first of all, send them to manage volunteers before you send them to manage paid staff. And what he was pointing out was the best type of training that you can possibly obtain is where the leader that you want has managed volunteers. Because if you can manage
Absolutely.
volunteers successfully, you can run any company.
Yes.
And that is the
There you
reality,
go.
because the way you deal with
Yeah.
volunteers is totally
Yes.
different to the way you deal with paid workers to a large extent. And
Mm.
because, as Rob rightfully said, the volunteers don't have to come. They don't have to
Mm.
come. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that your leadership enabled them to constantly come and constantly give of their best is truly a commendation to the leader. And where better place to be a leader and get good training but in the church, where you can lead group of men, group of women, and they don't have to follow you, but they do follow you, is truly remarkable. I'm going to show you, I did mention that we would do this last week, and I'll welcome Sister Christine and Sandra and Marcia Baker and everyone else. I want to show you the John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. And it's something that I think is really, really powerful. So I'm going to show that to you now. And as Rob made mention, you got level 1, level 2 to level 5. And I want you to notice a few things. Under level 1, if you look under the red, level 1, you will see position. All of those start with P. Position, permission, production, people development, all with P. If you look in the middle, all of it starts with R. Okay, so there is a significant point there that you should follow, you should bear in mind. So level 1, any leader that's appointed starts at level 1. They have the right. In other words, Bishop Ted Roy has appointed me to be pastor in Wembley. So I have the right to be the pastor because he has given that to me. Okay, so a good way of looking at this is somebody gives you level 1, okay, level 1, which is the right, but you're going to have to earn the level 2, level 3, and level 4, and the people will give you level 5. I want you to let me make this clear. You are given level 1. That's a starting point. Someone employs you into leadership position, so you got the right, you got the position, but you have to earn level 2, level 3, level 4, and it's the people that you're leading that will give you level 5. And this is truly amazing. So you're given the position, that's level 1. Then you move to level 2, where you begin to build relationship with people in your team. Now, you may not be able to build relationship with every single person, but you build relationship with the right people. And if you notice what Jesus did, he built relationship with 12 men.
Yeah.
And at that level, people follow you because they want to follow you, because they like you. You know, in level 1, people follow you because they have to. You know, they get paid, or you're the leader. You know, for example, you know, I'm the leader in Wembley. People follow me not because I'm, you know, what special or whatever. They follow me because I'm the leader, you know, or else they would probably leave. And if they leave and go somewhere else, they're going to have to follow another leader who's got the position anyway. But the level 2 is where you build relationship, and that's such a very, very powerful level where you build relationship with people. This is the thing I've always realized. The greater the relationship you have with somebody, the more you're able to influence them. Now, level 3 is where people follow you because of the things that you do for the organization. You get results. They see you as a leader who gets results. You achieve things. You know, there is productivity in that respect. So people follow you because there's results. You're meeting targets. You're achieving things are happening, and so on and so forth. And this is one of my favorite levels. Level 4 is people development. Is developing people. It's that level again where you talk about delegation and delegate to develop people and so on. So you're reproducing people. You are training people to take over your position, as it were. So people follow you because of what you've done for them. And this is where you get loyalty and commitment. For example, in Wembley, we just spent £6,000 just helping people on their development and their training and development. That's you know, people development. We spend thousands of pounds just on people's development and sending them off here and there and all kind of things that we do for our people. And when you do that, you know, it's amazing result you get from them. When John Maxwell was in Bethel on the 1st of February of this year, we spent £2,100 getting our leaders to that. I brought a van load of leaders down, spent over £2,000 on them to develop them, to train them so that they can actually excel. And when you do that, you get commitment, you get loyalty, because people follow you because of what you're doing for them. And when you build relationship and you get result and you develop people, the people then give you level 5, which is the respect. People follow you because of who you are and what you represent. If you take, for example, when, say, Manchester City or Man United or Arsenal, when they win the league or they win the European Cup, what do they do with the manager? They take the manager and throw him up in the air. That's what we call the pinnacle. That's what we talk about when we talk about respect. The people give you that. Notice, somebody give you level 1. The people give you level 5. But as a leader, you're going to have to earn level 2, 3, and 4. You're going to have to build relationship. You're going to have to get result. And you're going to have to develop people. And I think, Rob, that this 5 levels of leadership is really a powerful tool in the workplace. It certainly has changed a lot for me, and I have benefited greatly from this particular tool. In fact, I've been using it before, but I didn't have it in the format that John put it in. You with me, you're building relationship and getting result, because leadership is about getting result. It's pointless you being a leader if you're not getting any any results, whether in the workplace, the church, or the home. And this is a powerful tool, I think, a really powerful tool.
Yeah, very powerful. And what I like about it, if you feel, as in me, that you've arrived, you're a great leader. You look at that chart and you realize you're nowhere
Yeah,
near,
yeah, yeah.
and there's always room for improvement. And you look at then leaders, let's say in the workplace, who, they, as Jesus put it, they lord it about and so on. They're able to lord it about because of the title and not so much of the people who've got them there. And that's the difference. And so that's what gives me confidence in terms of servant leadership in a workplace that doesn't really naturally kind of support that type of leadership. But I love it. I thrive off it because for me, it's like, I know what I need to do, but I'm going to befriend, I'm going to influence, I'm going to build up relationships so that even when I'm struggling, when I don't think there's no one to help me, that's when God just brings people into my life. And it's people that I've realized I've invested in. There's times when I'm having heated conversations at work, and something may be said, may be offensive, or meant to hurt. I don't see it, I don't hear it. I'm just not personal, and so. And then moments later, I'll either get an email, a phone call to say, "I'm very sorry, Rob, for saying such and such, but I admire how you didn't." And they remember things like that, so that when you are in a time of need as a leader, they help to pick you up, because sometimes we have a perception that a leader's always the one who's, leading the way, got to be strong all the time. But sometimes you need the people to carry you, if that makes sense. You need the sometimes they have to go, no, we need you, we need to look after you, and because there's something special in that leadership they need for them to achieve what they need to. So, leadership's a very, you put the art of leadership. I like that because it is an art, leadership. There's no formula necessarily you can use and say, right, I'm going to be the best leader in the world. As Jesus simply put it, if you want to be the best leader, know how to serve. And serving, there's so many things that you have to address. You talk about the fruit of the Spirit, the character of yourself. They talk about the 9 fruits. None of us are perfect in that, but if we can continue to strive for that perfection, then we're on the right road of good leadership. So I love that chart that John Maxwell did, because it shows you that all of us have got a long way to go to earn that respect.
Yeah, and the thing about what John says, if in people in your team, different people in your team may be at different levels. So if you take, for example, say on the relationship level, you may have a certain amount of people on that level and other people on different levels, but it takes a long time to get people up, because for example, we have people who are on the Gordon Conwell course. They got people who are on the Spirit and Life course right now, people who are on TSM, and so on. And I would love to see every leader within the church on some form of course and some form of development, even though it may take years. But at the end of the day, those skills that they're developing and learning, they're going to use it back in the body of Christ anyway. And that is truly, truly amazing. And as a leader, we have a responsibility to develop people as best we can. One of the things I see is that does that is giving people responsibility, delegating to them, and so on. Now, there's a question here, Rob. That's Gene. Welcome, Gene. Thanks for the question. How do how do you see developments with our young people, especially our young men? How do you see developments with our young people, especially our young men? I'll let you go first, Rob, or you want me to go
Yeah.
first? Yeah.
No, I'm happy. It's a good question. It's something. It is my passion. If there's, when I pass, I hope my legacy will speak of my investment, my love for young people, especially, young men. And it doesn't mean I discard women, but, obviously because I'm a black male and of my upbringing, and how God has saved me, you know, it's the least I can do is to help to develop the younger generation. So I see it as very, very important. And where I'm at is that I want the youngers to be twice, at least twice as good as me, to be in that place that exceeds wherever or whatever I think I've achieved. That's where I'm at, really. And I have to say, the young black generation, just because of where the black people have come from in terms of struggle, the oppression, and all these adversities. I look at my parents, I look at my family, I look at the black generation internationally have struggled. So for me, my focus for me has been the younger people. And so, um, just to see the movement recently in terms of racial justice, I hesitated because it's not just Black Lives Matter. There are other individuals that are doing things as well. But just the young generation to see them rise up, makes me joyful. But with that said, it's something I've been doing for years. For those who know me, I'm a chair of a charity, not active as it used to be, but it supports parents and children, and that was born out of me mentoring for 11 years. I even took a sabbatical out of my profession for at least 1 year, where I had a calling. I left full-time employment, had no plan, but had a desire to develop young people. It was a clear message from God. People think I was crazy. Even my spiritual mother, who has now recently passed, bless her, when I told her she couldn't, she's like, but I still respected her, But I left my profession to follow that development of young people. Do I regret it? Absolutely not. Was it difficult? Yes, for my family, but I love every single day. And the joy for me is when you can dedicate one of those children's children. I mean, what I mean is the adult who's now one I used to mentor can say, I wouldn't mind if you would do this for me or for my family, and so on. You walk on the street and somebody twice the size as you, deep voice, hello, sir. And then you realize it's somebody you've mentored. These things, for me, this is what life is about. So it's a great question. I mean, I could go on all night because there's so many things that I continue to do, and even in my workplace, really on this thing, I'm now what they call a BAME ambassador for Jaguar Land Rover, and Jaguar Land Rover have become one of the first manufacturers to be chartered in this kind of sector. But what I do once a month, I'm part of a panel where the employees, and it's growing week on week, the amount of black, white, you name it, in JLR are now joining this movement, and I'm part of that panel. And what I'm doing, my purpose there, is to encourage the young people because it's not easy in
Mm,
any company. Talking about black and blackness and culture is going to have a barrier. And what I want to do
mm,
is break down some of those barriers. I can't do it on my own, but I want to leave an opening for these younger people to step in and make that gap
mm,
wider. So, one day we will see racial equality, you know, and it'll be a thing of the past, of all this racial injustice and social welfare, that's unbalanced.
mm. Excellent. I think,
Hmm.
as you rightfully say, it's an excellent question. I mean, I have trained young people for years on a course that I designed with Bishop Mike Wilson. We call it Pursuing Excellence. It started off, we call it Genesis, and what it basically
Yes.
was is we took around 30 young people at a time away on a retreat. So we started with a residential retreat, either from a Thursday to the Sunday or from a Friday to the Sunday. And then when they come back, they would go through 8 Wednesday evenings. And we've had some amazing success stories. And as you rightfully say, you meet them up every now and then, and they tell you of some of the things that they've done. And when I look at where some of them are today, it truly is amazing. Some made it onto TV, some went on to different things, some went into theater, some went into their own business, and so on. And one of the things I discovered is that during that time is not all young people took up the challenge. Not
Hmm.
all of them took it up. It was mainly Rob. It was mainly females that took it up. A lot
Oh,
of the
wow.
boys didn't for whatever reason. Some did, some didn't.
Mm.
And what I discovered with a lot of our young men, you have to use sometimes a different approach. Some of them are not interested in the classroom style, and so
That's right.
on. You almost have to take them through a different route. And so what I had to do at one
Yes.
stage was we set up a football team to just try and grab some of them into that. They were interested in that. They're interested in the cricket, in the football, in the tennis, in the table tennis, and in the squash. And so we had those things going. And so you have to have different things that will attract people, young people. In the church, sometimes we don't have a wide variety of fishing nets, as it were.
Yeah.
Sometimes we just have one methodology, and come on, let's pray. You know what I mean? So let's pray. Let's go to Bible studies when there may be other ways and other approaches that we may have to look at if we want to get the young boys. What we do find out in our churches, Rob, is that we're losing them at the moment they turn 13, 14, 15, and so on. They come to church because they've been forced to, rather than out of their
Yeah.
own love and so on. And before you know it, they're gone. And
Yeah.
so some churches, though, Rob, manage to keep a lot of young people. There are one and two
Yeah.
churches that are doing extremely well with young people, and
Yeah.
but the majority isn't. And it's a matter of
Yeah.
being able to have a really effective approach that work, especially with men. As you know, there's that book out, Rob, that says why men hate church.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
there are certain things in that book, like, for example, a lot of men don't like holding hands. I hate holding hands, brother Rob, but people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
we can't do it now because of COVID and hugging and things like that. A lot of men
Yes.
are not into that
Yeah.
huggy,
I'm telling you.
holding,
I'm
yeah,
telling you.
not into it. And so on. So maybe that book has I don't know if you remember. I think his name was David Morrow.
David Morrow.
Yes,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about David Morrow because it was Clive Lewis. I think you invited him
yes,
over,
Clive. Yes,
and he
yes.
actually spent. Yeah. David spent a day at our house, so we actually wined and dined
Okay,
him
okay.
without the wine, if you know what I mean. So we had a
Yes.
very, very good discussion, and I tell you, he was mesmerized with my wife's cooking as well.
Oh,
He said he's
excellent,
never
excellent.
made Caribbean cooking in that way, but we had a good old talk, and the Casa culture as well, because America culture was
Mm,
slightly different, but it was spot on for those who
mm,
haven't read his book, why men hate going to church.
that's right.
It's got some real key tips in there, and like you say, and some churches will be successful in
Mm,
keeping young
mm,
people,
mm,
but you find if your church is a traditional church, you are going to struggle because young people like to be modern, and
mm,
you will have young people there, but they're going to be of a certain type. I mean, let's face it, they're going to be a certain type. And so you find most of those churches who are successful in terms of a large number of youth have learned how
mm,
to adapt not to lose their compromise about the words, but they've learned to adapt so that the young
mm,
people can relate. And often they have young leaders in place, which is the key. When you have,
mm, mm.
50, 60-year olds like us trying to run youth departments and the whole, it doesn't work as effective. I
No,
still feel young
yeah.
at heart, but we've got to be wise in terms of what
Yes,
we're trying to
yes.
achieve. And I say leadership is just as important for that, because you've got to realize you've got to delegate some things and
Mm,
have the right people in place. But some people don't want to let go, is the truth of
mm,
it, Pastor
mm.
Errol. Some of them are in their 60s, 70s and still want to
I'm
run
still a youth
children
leader.
ministry and things like that. Yeah, yeah. And, what can you do and say about that? And then we wonder why the youth are leaving.
Mm,
So it's one of them. I love the
mm,
youth. I love, but I know I'm I'm not, as young as I used to be, put it that way. And so I ask my daughters about what's going on. I do know what's going on to a degree, but I just want to hear the language and the tone, and just when I do speak, I'm kind of still sounding a bit hip, you know. But I tell you, when we were mentoring in our peak, I got to name this individual, Dylan Hamilton. I think you met him, Dylan
okay,
Hamilton.
yes,
But
yes, I
me and
remember.
him, we worked as like partners in crime, to the point our mentoring franchise, we were recognized by many people in our
Mm,
community, but especially the Birmingham City Council. And if anybody knows about councils, they don't just pick anybody to deliver, certain cases. But Birmingham City Council would ring us two or three times a week, to say we have another one, we have another one, because our success rate on how to relate, how to get results was, 90 odd percent. There's probably one we failed. We built a relationship with the gangs. I remember
mm,
one particular, I'm going to say notorious gang leader.
mm,
Um, he came knocking on the church door with his son, and he says, "I'm begging you, look after him, because I can't look after him on the path that
mm,
I'm going." And he left, and then he came back, no other conversation, and so on, and spent years, with certain people. Up to now, people don't know who we truly mentored. There's people now, as in parents in influential positions, where we've mentored their children and so on. So we've built, a real good community that, we don't sing and jumping around and say, look what we've done, but we know we've made a difference, especially the young
mm,
people, and can see a difference in the community. I can go into
mm,
certain establishments and nod my head and go, I
mm.
know, I've had a part of that. And King Solomon's School, what a
Yes, yeah.
legacy that is
Yes,
already,
yes, absolutely.
in Birmingham, a
Mm,
school, business, and it's growing. It's got its challenges, but what a legacy,
mm,
and to
mm,
know that people like you and I have had a part to play in building that
mm.
legacy as well.
And people need to know, some of those things. I think we don't have a great communication channel of some of the things that's going on. I laugh actually because when you were speaking there, I went to the youth convention led by Sister Leon Jacobs, and I decided that I would go and support her. And also, I took a lot of young people from the church and so on, and I just really wanted to support the youth and so on. So I'm sitting in the convention, Rob, and back in my day, convention was different to the youth one. So I heard Leon say it's selfie time. So I said, selfie? What is selfie? And every youth in the building got up and got their phone and taking selfie in the convention, and they had to send it to social media with a hashtag, something like that. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? In convention? So anyway, I'm sitting there.
Yeah.
I think this is the next day now, and I heard Sister Leon says it's Kahoot time. I said, Kahoot? Kahoot? And what it was, as you know, Kahoot is an app on your phone that you actually go in, and now they're gonna do a quiz, but it's adjusting to the time. It's adapting to what's taking place in the time, because what's happening, if you did ask me to plan the youth convention, it's going to be some prayer and some singing and some preaching, because that's what we're used to. And but the youth of today, the social media, the way it works is a little different. We're not changing the method, the message, but we're just looking at the method of how we get through to them. So that's problem. Here's another question here. He says, I believe that volunteers should have role descriptions so that they can see the vision and work towards it. Now, before Rob mentioned, I thought I'd come in first in this one. I agree that it's great to have job descriptions and all written down on paper and explain and all of that stuff. But interestingly enough, I looked at the way Bishop T.F. Foreman trained us, and he didn't have one piece of paper written down of anything. Yet he produced more pastors than anybody else I know. He produced more leaders around the country than anyone else I actually know. Yet he had no paper. He gave us no paper. He would appoint us, Rob, and he would pull us in when he needs to pull us. Classic example, when I was youth leader, which was one of a very, very important position in Wembley at the time, because our youth service was the biggest service on a Sunday. And right. I remember leading at the front, and he would have, back in those days where we had 2 tables up the front. Right. So he would sit with his leaders, and the youth department would sit on the others. So if I went up to preach, or I was doing something foolishly, all I would hear is, preach the word, because I might have been talking about myself. I might have been drifting off. You know what I mean? I might have been talking something that I shouldn't have been. But he had a way of how to let, it's like a dog on a leash, if you like, and he knew when to pull the dog in and so on. But he never had one piece of paper that he wrote anything down, because in their day, they were into paper and pen. It's only when we come along, the college graduates and the studiers and so on. But he was more effective than a lot of people who have the paper. But I do still agree that, if you look at the workplace, for example, everyone's got a role description. It's all written down, the person's specification, and everything is written, and exactly. And I think that's a good way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are people who have worked without it and were equally as effective.
It's a good question, isn't it? Because I can argue to say 100%, yes, you must have roles and descriptions, roles and responsibilities. And then on the other side of the coin, I can say, well, why do you need it? Who does it benefit? You see, so because I'm somebody who likes to write specifications. Why? Because it makes it clearer for me. So the person who's raised that, sorry, Mr. You said who
that was Gene Taylor, right? At the Gene. Let me see, Gene. Yes, right at the top nearly.
Okay, so Gene, it would be interesting to know a bit more about the context, and it's similar to probably Brother Winston talking about how people lead, and I suspect in the volunteer sector. Now, it's about context because um, if I think about my example of when I'm running the charity, I will want certain people to come in to mentor. So
Mm.
that's why I'll have a description. I'm looking for somebody who's willing to mentor and such and such. But there's another level where, as a volunteer, I've had individuals going, I need to be told what exactly I need to be doing. And that's when I kind of switch off a bit because I'm thinking this person it wants to be led, yes, but how are they going to lead somebody else when they're
Mm.
going to want most of the time to be led? And so I don't mind having a bit of spending time investing because that's what we must do and disciple. But I'm looking for an individual to have a bit of proactiveness, to have their own kind of initiative to then do whatever. So I do agree that we should have roles, but it should be very high level. As Pastor Errol, you've said, as your inspirational leader, Bishop Pullman, I look at Jesus, where
Mm.
did he have
Mm.
anything written down that,
Mm.
he
Mm.
spoke it? And
Mm.
it's not that he can't write, he could tell you he could read, he studied. But for me, it's about how you connect, what's your motive? Yeah, what's your motive? And sometimes if you don't know, you need to write it down. And
Yes.
that's where
Yeah.
I think, roles and responsibilities is very good because it helps you to
Mm.
communicate where you want to be. And
Mm.
so other
Mm.
people can see it. But there's some people who are so gifted, they don't need to write it down because you'll get it. And why?
Mm.
They seem to have this charisma to just do, and you follow and you get it. So it does work for a lot of people, but I wouldn't make it a hard fast rule that you must, whatever you do, da, 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 da.
Mm.
But there are many functions, especially within the church or organizations, where it's important, especially where it's a massive organization. But it's really about the context for me, um,
Mm.
and what level of detail um, you put on that is also important.
Excellent.
Mm.
Well, thanks to everyone. If there's any other questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat room for us. I want to say welcome again to everyone. And Rosa Lita, welcome. Alethea, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And everyone else who is here, appreciate you coming. And also for those of you who's been able to contribute. Somehow we seem to get the streaming working a little better than it was when we started. So to God be the glory for that. Don't forget, yes, I will do a roundup in a moment, but I'm just gonna probably Winston said we have role description for life group leaders. It does give our leaders with a little guidance to their roles in response. Absolutely, I have those as well. For I created something for peer group leaders, and it's some of the things I wanted them to focus on, some of the things I wanted them to know, and what I had on the list was things like, very things like I really wanted them to know was I need you to think. This is one of the things I had on my list, actually, Rob. I want you guys to think outside the box. This is one of the things I had in it.
Absolutely.
I do not want you guys to think in the box. Think outside the box. In other words, be as creative as possible.
Absolutely.
Try things, even if you don't think I'm going to agree. You never know until you try. You never know what you can get away with until you try
Yeah,
it,
good.
and so on. So, and those are some of the things I wanted them to focus on: the creativity. You don't have to do it the conventional way. Two song and a prayer and a testimony, and we go. Be creative. You could go bowling. For example, I went bowling actually with two of the care groups, Brother Rob, and And the
Mm.
thing with me now is it becomes very competitive because I can't lose. I don't want to lose on the bowling. You see, so and so everybody
Mm.
there is trying to beat the pastor and so on. I think I came third anyway or something like that. So I still
Ah.
lost anyway. So in fact, I
Mm.
think I lost on the very last ball. I think that's how I lost. But it's thinking out the box. Go have a meal. You know, who says the Sunday school have to be in the church? Why? In fact, some of them took the Sunday school even to McDonald's. Some of the with the young
I've done that.
people.
Yeah.
And it really created an interest and got more people out. And so it's a
Mm.
matter of being creative. The problem is some people will say they are not doing certain things because it's not in their job role. That's possible, and it depends on the leader that they have. I've never had people say that over the years. One thing that I do consistently is I have consistent monthly or quarterly meetings with leaders just to check in them how they're getting on, and for them to report back what's happening and challenges. But yes, one of those things. But Rob, we've got 7 minutes before close, and I have to close up because I got something I have to do
Mm.
after. But any last closing thoughts? We'll be back next week. But any
No.
closing thoughts for you? Just 2 minutes and just close your any
Sure.
closing thoughts, and then I will close out after that. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just listening to that last question actually about job roles and the word job. That kind of, you know, I think for me, I love my job because, and the job is because I go to work and get paid, but I love everything I do and don't necessarily see as a job. I just put some passion in it. I do it because it's me and it's servant leadership. So for me, all that we've discussed, and I keep on saying this in all the different topics we talk about, but it's about your mindset, really. Because if you frame your mind that it's just a job, and you want to be told how to do your job, and you're only going to do it because you get paid and all that, then that kind of frames your attitude as well, and how people will ultimately see you. And we're talking about leadership. So we need to be looking at servant leadership and how Jesus did what he did. And would people accuse Jesus of only doing it because it was his job and he only did because because no. So, I kind of encourage everybody really, that you are a leader and in your own way, in your own environment, whether it's in the family, the church, the workplace, wherever it is, and ask yourself, am I as good as I can be? The answer will be no. And then you've got to reflect, look in that mirror and ask yourself, well, how can I be better? How do people see me? Do they see that I have integrity? Do they see that I'm reliable, credible? Because as a leader, you got to look at you. It's too easy to look at somebody and blame somebody else for this, that, and the other. They haven't given me a description. But you, as a leader, how can you help yourself? And, a bit of guidance is to continue to study the word, continue to pray, not just to speak, but to hear from God. Continue to learn from those stories that we read and the stories that we hear. How can I improve on my leadership? John Maxwell, Mars Monroe, we talk about all these great motivational speakers. Their books are second to none. They cost about £10, but what they are worth in your life is a whole lot more. So I urge, if you don't have them, search Steve Covey, John Maxwell, Mars Monroe. Don't forget the Bible, word for today. You know, and your Bible study circles, you can learn so much about you and your leadership. So I hope you're encouraged tonight, and looking forward to being back on this platform, just to encourage others and to know that at least one's benefited from the discussions that we've been having over the number of weeks. So God bless you. It's been fun. It's been great. I'm learning as well, and all those who are chatting even now. I'll probably go and have a look after it's finished. I can't multitask so well. But thank you all. Brother Winston, I'm waiting to see you on one of these platform sometime soon. So God bless you. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Rob. Appreciate that. Yes, I didn't have my mic on. I wanted to close out and say thanks to Brother Rob for excellent conversation tonight. Awesome, awesome. I just really wanted to close out on one particular thought, really, one particular point, which I think I came across this statement by John F. Kennedy some time ago. And I thought it was just truly a profound point for all leaders who really wanting to excel. And as you know, he was assassinated many years ago. And he said leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. And I came across a statement when I was studying in my first year in Church of God of Prophecy in a school called BTI, Bible Training Institute. And the thing I learned, and I'll never forget, I've forgotten it, is the largest room in the world is the room for improvement. If you want to be an exceptional leader, you should always be excelling. You should always be learning. You should always be developing. You should always be investing in yourself. It's just an ongoing, lifelong learning. LLL, lifelong learning. And if you don't want to go out of date, with your leadership ability, then you should be constantly learning about leadership, learning about how to cast a vision and how to stay focused on the vision, how to communicate within your team, how to put together your plan and put that into operation, how to delegate in order to develop people and to disciple people, how to evaluate and to appraise people, how to be a great role model, and how to actually find a coach and listen to him or her on the road, how to be a great servant. Talk about servant leadership, talk about team leadership. Those are very important. Inspiration, influence, courage, and also how to actually influence people, and also about integrity and how to do problem solving and make decisions and so on. We talk about handling change and making sure that we know how to do these things. And so as a leader, we ought to learn in all these areas, ongoing, non-stop. It never stops. The day you believe you have arrived, you have lost. The day you believe you've achieved it, you learn it all, then you've lost. And you want to develop yourself, invest in yourself, spend money on yourself. ROI, return on investment. And this is one of the things that I love to do. I love to just go to YouTube and type in something about leadership and learn from John Maxwell, the greatest leadership trainer on the planet, to learn from T.D. Jakes, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest preachers on the planet, to learn from Casey Price, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest teachers on the planet, including Miles Monroe. And so there are so many other people out there as well who have developed the skills, develop the learning and the knowledge, that are willing to share it with us free of charge, no cost. And so as a leader, you should always be learning, ongoing, never stop. And that's the one key thing I want to leave with you tonight is you're a leader. Whether you're by yourself or you got a family or whatever, develop yourself, your attitude, your skills, your knowledge. I call it your ASK, attitude, skills, knowledge. And the more you develop your attitude, skills, knowledge, the more powerful you become, the more money you make, the more confident you become, and the more people want to be in your presence. It is just truly amazing. I have discovered this over the years, that All I had to do was focus on these 3 years. And when I realized I didn't have to focus on a lot of areas, it really was encouraging to me because I only want to focus on just a few things. So when I was told all you need to do, Errol, is focus in 3 areas: your attitude, your skills, and your knowledge. The attitude is, how you deal with yourself, how you look at yourself, and how you deal with people, how you look at other people. Develop that, and that is key. Develop your skills, and I'm not trying to master many areas. I've decided on 4 areas that I want to master in my lifetime. Just 4. One is leadership, one is organizational development, one is what I call religious studies, which is the Bible, and the other one is education training, teaching people in terms of personal, interpersonal development skills. Those are my 4 areas. Those are the 4, and they're all interlinked, which is a beautiful thing about it. I have decided this many years. I call it LORE, L-O-R-E, which is my name spelled backwards, E-R-R-O-L, L-O-R-E. L-O-R-E means traditional knowledge and so on. It talks about wisdom and all of that stuff. So I want to be one of the greatest leaders that ever moved on the planet. That's for leadership. Organizational development, how to actually run an organization and keep it functioning and be able to do all the things that makes it happen. So for example, being a pastor in a church, that's an organization. Run my own business, that's an organization. How to manage that, how to see to it that everything just function exceptionally well and everything just working beautifully. Now to also be a consultant to other organizations that they can actually run that. And I had the training through Bridge Park, through HBCC, and through a multiplicity of different organizations that I've been involved in. My 3rd area is religious studies, or theology. In other words, I use the religious because it's L-O-R-E, and I want to master the Bible. I mean, master it from Genesis to Malachi, from Matthew to Revelation, from Revelation to Matthew, from Malachi to Genesis, you name it. I want to actually know it. That's why I study so hard. And then finally is what I call personal and interpersonal development. I call it education training. And so those are the 4 areas I choose to master before I leave planet Earth. And they're all interlinked. And it's all about learning. If I don't learn, I can't teach. If I don't learn, I can't do all those things. So I want to leave you with this quote. I think it's really is fitting, and I think it's so powerful. You've got to take responsibility. You've got to take on the onus. Spend your own money. Let me tell you a secret that top professionals do, and it's amazing technique or amazing thing. This is it. It's a very simple technique. They spend 10% of what they earn developing themselves. This is a secret that the top chief executive, the top professionals do to stay in the game. Because let me say this to you, more training takes place at the bottom than it does at the top. For example, when I did training for, unemployed people and so on, a lot of training going on at that level. When it comes to the next level up, like supervisors and managers, a lot of training. But when it comes to the CEOs, there's less training at that level. So what the CEOs do, they spend 10% of what they earn developing themselves, getting better and better. It's called return on investment, ROI. So maybe that's a technique that you can apply, is to spend your own money developing yourself. If your workplace can do it, fine. Because one of the first things that gets hit when there is a financial crisis is the training budget. One of the first things that goes is a training budget. So when you go into a company, they may not have the money to train you. They may not have the money to upskill you, but you're going to have to upskill yourself. You're supposed to be so skilled that when they come to do their, redundancy, you're not even on the list. If my boss, Bishop Ted Roy, was going to sack a few overseers, and because maybe he has to downsize and so on, I want it to be so that my name is not even on the list. It's not even on the list. If I work in a company, I want to operate in such a way that when they do downsizing, my name don't even go on the list because I'm too valuable to that organization. Here's what happened to a guy once. He worked for an organization and they were downsizing and they got rid of him, and so on. A few months later, they realized they needed him. They needed him badly. They didn't realize they made a mistake and got rid of the wrong guy. But this guy was more valuable to them than almost all the other employees. So anyway, they decided to go back to him and offer him his job back. He was earning around $35,000 a year at the time. And so they offered him his job back. And he said, no, he's not coming back. He didn't like the way that they dealt with him. So they said he's not coming back. So what they decided to do, they decided to double his salary. They doubled his salary to $70,000. And then he thought to himself, and he said to himself, if I'm worth £70,000 to you, then how much am I worth? And what he then did was he went and set up his own business, and the rest is history. And the point I'm making is develop yourself. You know, there's no one that's indispensable. We do know that. But what I'm saying here, the more you develop yourself, is the harder it is for anyone to get rid of you when they're downsizing, because you have learned, you have developed yourself, you have developed the skills and the ability to do what it is that you're doing. Don't leave it to chance. Don't leave it to your church. Don't leave it to your employer. Don't leave it to the government. Let me tell you something. You know, if somebody asks you how much you earn per month working for the company, and you told them £10 an hour, it's not true. Well, it's true in a sense. If you see when you see what I'm saying, that's what they do, but it's really not really true. Let me tell you what they pay, how they do the pay scale in the workplace. You are paid based upon the value that you bring to the marketplace. You see, if you bring a certain value to the marketplace, they pay you higher. The more value you bring to the marketplace, they pay you. You'll never find me on the picket line because you're only fighting for maybe 5%, 2% increase in comparison to inflation. But you're going to find me learning and developing so that I can earn more because I have learned more. So the more you develop yourself, the more you develop your skill, the more books you read, the more tapes you watch, the more videos you watch and things like that, the more you increase your value to indeed do great things. So I hope this has been useful for you today, and I hope this point has been valuable to you. I hope you can take away this absolute nugget and realize that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. The more you develop your attitude, skills, and knowledge, the more money you make, the more confident you become, the more powerful you become, and the more people want to be in your presence. It's an absolute fact. Develop your ASK. You should have the best attitude in your company. You work for a company, your attitude should be the absolute best. You work for a church, your attitude should be the best. Talk about skills. Listen, you know, I have a lot of software, and Brother Rob and I, we use, you know, similar software. And you know the amount of hours I spent just learning that software, the hours I spent learning the scriptures so I can teach it and answer questions. And I strongly recommend to all of you, develop yourself, develop your skills, and you'll be amazed at what you'll be able to achieve. I promise you that. Well, have yourself a wonderful weekend. Don't forget, I won't be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. I'll be on holiday. Not sure what I'm going to be doing, but I'll be on holiday for those few days. So I'll see you back here. I will be back here on next week Friday, and there will be a final session on the art of leadership. So take care of yourself. Have yourself a fantastic weekend, and may the Lord bless you and keep you all. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.